Hello and welcome to the short webinar series on fire prevention plans for general industry. If you've had our classes before, you've seen this disclaimer. Our classes do not make you a competent or qualified person according to the definition of OSHA. It can be used as part of that training, but one individual course does not qualify you to be competent or qualified. So many companies are unaware that they may need a fire prevention plan in place for their facility. Only 3 standards directly require a fire prevention plan, but indirectly, it's likely required in your facility. Why would some companies need a fire prevention plan? According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, 109 fatalities are caused in the workplace by fire or explosion. And you can see the last few years dating back from 2015. On average, over 5,000 workplace injuries occur on an annual basis due to fires and explosions. An average of $2.8 billion is lost each year as a result of workplace fires. So what is the cause of these fires? The number one cause is cooking, and that includes employees cooking their lunches, and then other various forms of cooking. Second is unintentional. Third is intentional. And then electrical malfunctions, heating, and equipment. Cooking fires caused 30,840 fires were caused by cooking on average. Unintentional or careless fires, about 11,160 on an annual basis. Intentional fires, 9,740 per year. Electrical malfunction, close to 8,000 fires a year. Heating fires, 7,740 per year. And equipment fires, 4,820 on an annual basis. So who needs a fire prevention plan? To figure this out, we need to ask a few questions. Here are the 3 standards that directly require a fire prevention plan as part of a written fire protection policy. Are you required to comply with 1910-1047, ethylene oxide? Are you required to comply with 1910-1050, methylene dianiline, also referred to as MDA? Are you required to comply with 1910-1051, 1,3-butadiene? All these sections apply to all occupational exposures to these chemicals, with few exceptions, and specifically require a fire prevention plan to be in place. Are you required to comply with 1910-157, which is portable fire suppression equipment? 1910-157 applies to the placement, use, maintenance, and testing of portable fire extinguishers provided for the use of employees. Do all of your employees evacuate immediately during a fire emergency? If no, then there are no requirements for a fire prevention plan, but other requirements under 1910-157 may apply. If yes, then more questions must be answered. Do you have fire extinguishers in the workplace? If you do not have fire extinguishers in the workplace and you require immediate and total evacuation upon a fire alarm signal, then you need to include an emergency action plan and a fire prevention plan in a written fire safety policy. Are fire extinguishers intended for employee use? If fire extinguishers are provided but not intended for employee use, then 1910-157 requires that you have an emergency action plan and a fire prevention plan, and also comply with the sections that include the inspection, maintenance, and testing of the fire extinguishers. Now that you know whether or not you need a fire prevention plan, what are the requirements? If you need a fire prevention plan and have more than 10 employees, then you will need to have the plan in writing, kept in the workplace, and made available for review by the employees. Employers with 10 or fewer employees may communicate the fire prevention plan orally. There are 5 minimum elements of a fire prevention plan, and the first one is a list of all the major fire hazards, proper handling and storage procedures for hazardous materials, potential ignition sources and their control, and the type of fire protection equipment that's necessary to control each major hazard. The second element is procedures to control accumulations of flammable and combustible material. The third element of a fire prevention plan is the procedures for regular maintenance of safeguards installed on heat producing equipment to prevent the accidental ignition of combustible materials. The fourth element is the name or job title of employees that are responsible for maintaining the equipment to prevent or control sources of ignition or fires. The final element of a fire prevention plan is to include the name or job title of employees responsible for the control of fuel source hazards. If you do have a fire prevention plan in place, you must inform employees upon initial assignment of the fire hazards to which they may be exposed. You must also review with each employee the parts of the fire prevention plan necessary for self protection. At the end of Subpart E in 1910, there is a non mandatory appendix that is provided to help employers with compliance to the emergency action plan and the fire prevention plan. One of the elements that is addressed is housekeeping. The standard calls for the control of accumulations of flammable and combustible waste materials, which includes combustible dust. The intent of the standard is to assure that hazardous accumulations of combustible waste materials are controlled so that a fast developing fire, rapid spread of smoke, or an explosion will not occur. Employers and employees should be aware of the hazardous properties of materials in their workplace and the degree of hazard each possesses. Oil soaked rags, for example, may have to be treated differently than general paper trash in office areas. Accumulations of materials which can cause large fires or generate dense smoke and are easily ignited or may start from spontaneous combustion are the types of materials with which this standard is concerned. Accumulation of flammable or combustible material may be easily ignited from a welder's spark or slag, cigarettes, or other low level energy ignition sources. Maintenance is also key. Certain equipment may be installed to control heat sources or to detect fuel leaks. Example of this may be temperature limit switch on a fryer in a restaurant or similar switches that may be found on dip tanks or flame failure and flashback arrestor devices on furnaces or similar heat producing equipment, such as an acetylene fuel torch. These types of equipment must be properly maintained or removed from service if they become inoperative. If not, a definite fire hazard exists and may be imminent. Lastly, employees and supervisors should be aware of the specific types of control devices on equipment that's involved with combustible materials and should make sure through periodic inspection and testing that these controls are operable. Also, remember that manufacturers' recommendations should always be followed to assure proper maintenance procedures are being conducted. That concludes our short webinar on fire prevention plans. Thank you for watching and check out our website for more upcoming additions to our series.